Hello and welcome to episode 4 of The Week That Was, a weekly program where we get to review the news headlines of the week. To discuss the news headlines of this week, again I have Mr. Sujay Gupta, well-known journalist and group editor of The Herald. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
To begin with, we begin the headlines that formed part of the Herald newspaper on Sunday, December 5th. We have a rather surprising and uncalled for statement by the Tourism Minister of India, Mr. Kishan Reddy, saying that the people have declared Goa as the casino capital. Now, he says that the government of India doesn't have to brand Goa as a casino capital, and if there are any benefits that would accrue to the state, then they would do so if required. So how do you react to this new statement?
Dr. Freddy, we are not very sure what the minister was really trying to get at or emphasize. Was he being slightly sarcastic that Goa has already been branded as a tourism capital and hence you don't need any other stamp? Did he say it with a tinge of regret? Or was he happy about the fact that casino tourists were already coming in and hence Goa is already seen as a casino capital, which in turn helps Goa's economy? We don't know what his intentions were. But what is certain is that when a union minister talks in this kind of a manner, then all the negative connotations that come with casinos, or the negative perception that happens, comes to the fore, and it almost seems as if it's getting endorsed by the government of the day. Now, there is no denying the fact that the casino economy has become important for Goa's tourism, because all other forms of tourism have completely shrunk.
Yes.
And even post-COVID, one would say that the casino income and the footfalls basically kept a segment of tourism completely alive. This has also not gone down well with a lot of people who feel that having casinos and the kind of tourists who come into Goa are not welcome.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there will be these two very strong sides that are coming in. Until and unless the Goa government or even the union government contributes towards having a better form or an alternative viable form of tourism, enhances other avenues for tourism, sees to it that the hospitality and the F&B industry kind of benefit a lot, do things to actually cut down on the unnecessary taxations and the burdens that the restaurant economy and the tourism economy is facing, so that those areas benefit.
Yeah. And
then improve tourism infrastructure and see to it that Goa becomes a more viable place. Have a taxi system, have an app-based taxi system, do stuff like that, improve your garbage to make it a better tourist destination. Otherwise, you will go on welcoming and encouraging tourists who come for a pinpointed purpose of coming, gambling and going away and doing the necessary spends. Because let us not forget the fact that whether one likes it or not, the major 5-star hotels in Panjim that are mushrooming, and you believe me, you will get no accommodation in any of these rooms in any of these Panjim hotels.
Yeah.
For instance,
especially on weekends. You see, for instance, the Taj Group, they virtually have a Taj hotel every 300 meters on that stretch. And so I'm just mentioning one, but it basically means that it makes business sense for them to have those many hotel rooms, and those hotel rooms are getting filled. They're not getting filled by normal tourists. 90% of them or 80% of them are casino tourists. So, what the tourism minister says is sounds a little awkward or doesn't sound good, but the fact that casino tourism is fueling Goa's economy at this point of time cannot be denied. There we move on to Monday, December 6th, where we have some good news for environmental activists, where the Save Mole movement against the 3 linear projects wins a major award from Sanctuary Asia magazine. This is good news for all the activists.
It's fantastic news, actually.
If I may just add a line, the organizers say that the movement teaches us that the best environmental defense strategies are from home-brewed movements.
Which is so true and so reassuring.
And the fact that this award has been given by the Sanctuary magazine even makes it even better. I think that's the icing on the cake, because the Sanctuary magazine, headed by the renowned environmentalist Bittu Sehgal, is actually one of the most sensitive environmental publications not only in the country and in the world. And for them to recognize a people's movement for an award is very important, because what this award means is that the core to environmental protection is people. So, every discussion that can be done, or every solution that needs to be arrived at on environmental issues, has to center around people, because people are basically our environment. And whether you look at forests, whether you look at wildlife, whether you look at any of these other aspects, it is essentially the homogeneous synergy between nature and people. And the Save Mole movement, it is beyond just ensuring that the three projects which are destroying the forests of Mole are scrapped. The movement essentially is, the dynamics of the movement is more broad-based. It is to ensure that the future generations of people in Goa are entitled and get their required number of trees, their forests, their lungs to breathe, and which will all impact the environment, and also ensure that pollution levels and other harmful aspects of environment destruction do not affect the future generations.
And this is
very important.
And this is a sweet victory for the people, since the government itself does not look too kindly and attributes motives to all activists, especially environment activists.
Absolutely, and the government has its own reasons, because they need a reason to take down any opposition to whatever deals, crony capitalism deals that they have. Because at the end of the day, all these projects are a symbol of crony capitalism, because you are doing it not to protect Goa, but to ensure that certain capitalists with certain projects ultimately benefit. Let us go to the core of it. What the Save Mole movement has been able to establish beyond doubt is that these three projects are not being done for the benefit of the people of Goa, but to essentially serve as transportation corridors for the movement of coal from the port, MPT port, to different parts of Karnataka and other areas. So Goa is being basically used as a conduit for the transportation of coal, which is known to be harmful. I will take just about 30 seconds to add that recently in Herald, one of our reporters went to the railway tracks when there was an inspection going on, and ultimately found lumps of coal not only on the tracks, but coal which is regularly collected by the railways and dumped on the side, and this coal is basically from spillage from the wagons. It's happening on a daily basis. So this is something that is not esoteric. This is not something that we are imagining. The spillage of coal and the harmful impacts of coal is a day-to-day living reality. It is not some dream or a figment of somebody's imagination.
We move on to Tuesday, December 7th, where on page 2 of Herald, The Voice of Goa, we have a story which is a long festering problem, that is sewage water is released into the river Sal, and which is seriously affecting the aqua farms, especially the shrimp culture. And there is a threat to their business, and there is a prognostication that this business of aqua farms may end in 2 years' time.
Yes, Dr. Freddy, you see, I believe, and many of people who are sensitive to these things would also concur, that our fields and farms are now being used as liquid dustbins. Fields and farms were actually a part of our lives. They were a source of regeneration. The soil was provided for the people. It provided food. It provides sustenance. What is sad is that continuously essentially our farms and fields are used as dustbins for debris, construction debris, for sewage, and so on and so forth. And which is extremely sad, because what is happening is that you're not only destroying crops. See, when you have sewage on your crops and your fields, those crops completely die because they're poisonous. When you have debris on the fields, you're blocking the drainage channels for for the ingress and the outward movement of water. So when you're blocking the water flow, then water overflows and destroys the crops because of excessive flooding. That's one aspect of it. When you have sewage dumped into your water bodies or into your fields and farms, you are destroying your fields and farms and also polluting your underwater, as in your groundwater, not your underwater, groundwater. So ultimately, what is the end result? The end result is complete destruction of not only this crop, but converting fertile lands into fallow lands. Look at the amount of farms that have been converted into barren fallow lands. So you're not only destroying your this year's crop, but you're actually destroying generations and future generations of farming and produce, which is shocking.
What is alarming is that the Goa State Pollution Control Board and other agencies have completely failed to stop this kind of pollution. And when they should have been proactive, especially in an eco-sensitive area like Goa, this is complete abandoning of their responsibility.
See, the Goa Pollution Control Board, instead of functioning like a pollution control body, functions like a typical police station. In a police station, no police person is going to investigate and look into a crime until and unless
you wait for somebody.
There is a complaint. They can see pollution happening in front of their eyes, but will still wait for a complaint to come to them to act on it. So, and this is generally a problem because so also what happens is apart from the Pollution Control Board, I would say every village has a biodiversity committee, okay, which reports to the State Biodiversity Board. I feel the biodiversity committee should be armed with more teeth, and they should be given the power to actually go and stop these kind of activities happening and take penal action thereof. So you should arm existing companies. See, I totally agree that the Pollution Control Board may not have the wherewithal and resources to tackle every village level pollution violation, but the biodiversity committees in every village area is meant only for that. So I think that's one area that one needs to look into.
Moving on to Wednesday, December 8th, the Herald has story on page 1 about the Supreme Court adjourning the contempt plea filed by Goa Foundation against the government and the Tamnar project.
Yes.
Now in this, there has been the notorious role of the Forest Department, which has been able to somehow give permission for the slaughtering of 3,000 trees.
Yes, this I think needs a little bit of explanation, so I request viewers to hear me patiently because it shows the extent of the connivance between the Forest Department and the project proponents and the government, all the three. There's a triangular thing. Now, the Supreme Court had passed an order on 4th February 2015 saying that there would be no conversion of forest land which is over 1 hectare, okay, and no conversion of forest land which has a tree density of 10%. What happens is that the Tamnar power project proponents and Tamnar, the whole project is going through again the pristine Mole sanctuary. 10 hectares of land was purchased, which is way above the 1 hectare of land which is the cap for all conversions, okay, and believe me, for each plot you cannot convert, even if you get the permission, you cannot convert more than 2 hectares per year, okay. Here you buy 10 hectares and you get that conversion done in one shot. 2,849 trees have been felled or permitted to be felled. The tree density is 90%. What did the Supreme Court say? You cannot have a tree density of more than 10%. Beyond that, you cannot give permission for conversion. You cannot give permission for conversion if it is more than 1 hectare. Here, Tamnar bought 10 hectares. The tree density was 90%. 2,849 trees. This permission was accorded by the government in spite of the Deputy Conservator of Forest objecting and protesting against it. Who signs the file? The Secretary to the Chief Minister, Mr. Krishnamurthy, as per the petition filed by Claude Alvarez, has signed it. When the then Chief Minister, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, was ailing and all decisions were being taken by the Secretary to CM, who is not authorized to do this because there is no documentation, and again, that's a matter of challenge or whatever, but what the petitioners, Goa Foundation, is saying is that look, Mr. Krishnamurthy did not have the authority to even accord this kind of permission. Anyway, that being said, the permission was accorded and this kind of felling was done. A file was moved to even bypass the Supreme Court order, to do this and bypass the original Supreme Court order.
So you see, this is the extent to which the project proponent of the forest department, which is being mandated to protect the forest and trees, and the government of the day, they work hand in glove to ultimately lead to the destruction of the forest and to have a project of this nature, forest environmentally destructive project to pass through.
Okay, moving on to Thursday, the December 9th. I don't know how to put this across, but it is the Chief Minister says that he will sack anyone if he gets a complaint regarding this sex scandal controversy. Now there have been videos circulating in the social media, and there is need to take, I mean, especially of this serious nature, if the minister is involved, the CM needs to institute an inquiry and immediately take action rather than allow this problem to fester.
No, absolutely. See, again, let's lay the facts on the table. There is an allegation based on purported facts by made by the Congress and others, stating that there is a video or maybe a series of videos and audio tapes where a certain serving minister in the government is believed to have sexually harassed and tormented a woman using his power as a minister. That is the allegation. Apparently, there are videos to buttress this allegation and make it seem authentic. The allegation is on the table. Political parties have made this into a huge issue, especially with the elections coming up. The Chief Minister is aware of it. His own party MLAs have also said action needs to be taken because the evidence is there. Now, the Chief Minister cannot act like an ostrich and bury his head in the sand and saying that, I'm waiting for a complaint to do it. There are very clear-cut allegations. Suo motu cognizance can be taken and a direct inquiry ordered. Because by now, everybody knows who the minister is being referred to. Everybody knows that. Okay, that is no secret. So if that is the case, there is no harm, or not only is there no harm, it is imperative that the Chief Minister orders an immediate inquiry, authenticates those tapes, because see, it's very important. Not only one is not concluding that that particular minister is guilty,
but you cannot ignore.
But the point is, you cannot ignore. But look at it this way: the particular minister, if he is innocent, then he deserves a quick closure of this case so that his name is also not tarnished further and cleared. So it works both ways. Because if your minister is innocent, then the minister should also be insisting that, look, please go ahead and do this, conduct an inquiry so that I am cleared of these charges. So the very fact that the concerned minister is not even independently has not gone and approached the Chief Minister, nor has the Chief Minister taken any action to facilitate this and take a suo motu action just to close the matter. Because politically, the longer it lingers, the more harmful politically it is for the ruling party.
So, how do you take this very curious news that the victim has filed a defamation suit against the Congress GPCC president?
The victim of the sexual attack?
Yeah.
Or the minister?
The victim has filed a defamation against the minister, against the GPCC chief. President.
That again we need to kind of see, we need to verify, because again what is interesting is we will not know the name, but there has to be some documentation to say a defamation suit has been filed.
But very curiously also, the GPCC president has neither named the minister nor the victim, but how does the victim come?
Exactly, so I would say a lot of these things are kind of, this all political interplay and power play. So these things are bound to happen. I think the only way to close this is to have an inquiry, because both the opposition as well as the ministers and the ruling will play their tricks to different kinds of tricks and tactics to see that the whole thing is diffused. But this will linger. Something like this never goes away.
So I'm afraid we have to conclude it there. We thank our guest, Mr. Sujay Gupta, Group Editor of the Herald, for his useful insights and analysis of the news. So the people, our viewers, get a better view of the news rather than just the facts. So we hope that you will join us again next week on the same program. Thank you very much for watching.